Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a project on our 92 Acura Legend sitting behind me. And that project is cleaning out the EGR system. So for those who may not be aware, the EGR system needs routine maintenance on this car about every 60 to 80,000 miles. Hydrocarbon buildup can lead to a choking out of the system and cause back pressure. This back pressure is thought to be one of the leading causes to premature head gasket failure. So you want to make sure it's on your list for every 60 to 80,000 miles. So let's get into routine maintenance on the EGR system on our 92 Acura Legend. Okay, we're going to start by disconnecting the electrical connector here. Tuck that aside. And we have one vacuum hose here that needs to be pulled. Okay, so there's not a lot of good viewing angles here, but I thought I could show you at least what we're dealing with. So you remove your EGR valve right here. This little pipe has two studs on it, and it connects to that. That's fairly easy to get to, fairly easy to see. This is where the difficulty starts to begin. You've got to do two 12mm bolts, two 10mm bolts that hold this pipe onto this flange assembly. There's also, you see down here, see those two studs that are sticking out? You have to remove the little nuts that go onto that. There's also this metal plate that's attached to that. So just be aware of that. Now you can't remove this because of that pipe, so you have to come over to right in here, I think is, it's not the greatest viewing angle, but there's a pipe bolt, two pipe bolts that hold that pipe on underneath. So here's one of the pipe bolts on the back side. So as you work from left to right, you need to remove two bolts to this pipe right here, or two nuts. And you can see just barely through all of this, that's one of them. And then the other one you can't see, but you're gonna have to feel for it. Lighting is gonna be your key here. Also, use 1/4 inch whenever you can, and use ratcheting wrenches. The combination of those will allow you to get back there and undo this. Once we get this assembly out, I'll show you the rest because it's a little difficult to explain it while it's still in the car. Okay, so we've got the EGR assembly all out of the car here. This is the pipe that goes to the top, bolts to your EGR. Then you've got this assembly right here for your pipe that goes over. So this is how this would attach, just like so. And then there's two studs that stick out here, and that would be one passage that you need to clean. Here's another passage, and then another passage. This pipe is probably the most difficult portion of this. So getting to these is not a problem, but it's getting to the back side of that's the issue. So I found that if you have a 1/4 inch fine tooth ratchet just like this set up with a little bit of a swivel head on it, then you're able to navigate back there and you can crack them. Once you crack them, it's fairly easy to use your finger to flick them off. What I used was a magnet to just capture those So I snaked it down in there. There's enough room that you could get one of these in there. Snaked it down in there so that as I flicked it off with my finger, I was holding this with my other hand just to capture that nut so that it wouldn't fall down. That is probably the easiest way to go about doing this. And then here's what we're looking at right here. So not completely choked out here, but we've got quite a bit of buildup there, and we will take care of that. So we're going to use some brake clean, and we'll just do it over our oil pan right there, and then we'll start getting everything on the back side of this engine prepped. We're going to see if we can get like a mirror down there and take a look at how it looks on the back side, because there is a little bit of a passage there on the back side of the engine that you can't see. But there's a cavity back there that you can clean out as well. We'll see if we can actually do that with the engine in. I've never had really much success with doing that. So once again, not the greatest viewing angle, but everything's on the back side of the engine. So basically what I did was I used my pipe cleaner to go through the backside just to make sure that there's an opening into the cavity on the backside of this where the pipe connects. By sticking this pipe cleaner in there, I'm making sure that there actually is a passageway that allows exhaust gases to go through into the pipe. What you wouldn't want is that that cavity gets choked out, and then no matter how much you clean the pipe in the EGR valve, you're still not able to allow the exhaust gases to come back and forth within that EGR passage. So this is just a slight preventative maintenance item, but there's really no room to get back there and take off that cap and replace that gasket into that cavity that I can see. Okay, so what we did was we used a little bit of brake cleaner to get some of the initial grime off, and now we're going to be soaking it with Simple Green on the highest concentration. We're going to let this sit for a couple hours, really soften up that carbon that's in there, and hopefully just easily clean out everything. One thing is that if you're going to do this, you want to make sure that before you do a reassembly and drive the car, that you allow it to dry for an appropriate amount of time, so that none of this cleaning solution gets actually into the engine. That would be important. It's probably not the end of the world if there was a little bit there, but you definitely don't want a lot. So take your time, let it soak for a bit, clean it out. If you have something like this that you can pick up from Harbor Freight, which is just a brass kind of pipe cleaner, if you will, you can use that to get into those deep areas, because sometimes the most choked out point isn't what you see, but it's actually in the narrowing of the passages, such as these bends. So that might be a little bit of a word of advice for you. Just go in there and use a brass brush to clean out, and then let it soak again, and then dry it out with some air. That will get you in a good shape. We'll go ahead and check out the back of the engine to see if there's anything while we're in there that we want to clean up and address. So let's talk about where we're at with the reassembly process. I do want to note that if you wanted to do a more thorough clean of the EGR system, you really should take the intake manifold apart because there's chambers on the back side of the engine. I kind of mentioned that I was trying to get there to see if we could clean those without having to take the intake manifold apart. Sadly, there's not enough room, at least for my hands, to get back there and open up the correct passages, which is why we opted for just to use the brush to make sure that the hole that leads to the pipe is clean and clear. As long as we have clear flow from that cavity into the pipe, the exhaust gases will have a way to travel. But depending on the age of your car and your engine, you may want to opt for removing the intake manifold altogether and doing a more thorough clean. This is more of a video on how to make sure that this passage stays routinely clean and how you can do it in a relatively short time. So where we're at right now took about 40-45 minutes-ish to get these three parts apart and get all the subsequent gaskets off. It took a little bit longer to do the actual cleaning because of how gummed up hydrocarbon deposits are on all of these parts. So allot yourself probably about 45 minutes of work time and about 2 hours worth of soaking and cleaning just to make sure that your passages are clean and clear and stay that way for a long time, so you don't have to come back in here every so often and just check it. So what we did in the last scene was we took boiling hot water and we went ahead and poured it down our pipe here. And the reason why we did that was there were still, after multiple carb cleanings and brake cleanings and scrubbing, still hydrocarbon deposits that I could not break off. Even with a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, I was chipping away at them. So I thought it might be better if we went ahead and used boiling water to soften up those hydrocarbon deposits. And then a combination of that with another soaking of carb cleaner was able to get most, if not all, of it out. So you want to make sure that your passages are clear because hydrocarbons stick to hydrocarbons really easy, but if you can make sure that this pipe is clean and smooth, that'll prevent hydrocarbons from building up faster. So basically make sure that you get all this clean and it should stay cleaner longer. This part right here, easy part to clean. It's really easy to get to all of the holes and crevices, and you can get a decent amount of carb cleaner in there to soak it with. This part was a little bit more difficult, but we were able to do it. And then this is a really easy part. You just want to make sure that when you get down into this orifice right here, that you get all the gum out of the opening that happens. So as you open it, as the system opens it, I should say, you want to make sure that it's not gummed up in there. So take a screwdriver and break up any of the entry bits, but also take a flashlight and look down that hole to make sure that it's not gummed up down there. And you can use some just carb cleaner to break it up. Then you want to make sure that there's no debris in this round orifice right here, because this is another opening that's mechanically operated, and this will actually get stuck open and cause a code if you have debris in there. So just make sure there's no debris in there when you're done. And then I cleaned up all the mating surfaces with a wire wheel. They stay pretty clean, but I just wanted to do that so that we have a nice mating surface for our gaskets. And then I also took the opportunity to clean this up and spray this with some clear coat so it won't continue to corrode out. And then that's where we're at. We're ready to reassemble. So let's go over the gaskets. This gasket right here, here's your part number from Honda, goes on the bottom of your EGR valve and mates with this top part here. This part number right here, this gasket, you're going to need two of, and this goes on either side of your pipe. And then this gasket right here goes on the bottom right there. So that's how you go ahead and reassemble everything. and this should be relatively quick and easy, no problems reassembling. Now, our torque specs are a little bit difficult, so let me go ahead and give you the cheat on this, because if you look at your shop manual, depending on which revision you have, you may see a torque spec for an EGR valve, or you may not. In mine, I don't. For whatever reason, this version of the shop manual does not have an EGR valve torque spec anywhere. I can't seem to find it. Here's your EGR pipe torque spec, so it's 9 foot-pounds, and your gasket's right there. The EGR valve itself is 16 to 18 foot-pounds, so just know that. That's just to make sure that this stays nice and tight up against your mating surface. But outside of that, we're ready to go ahead and reassemble everything, so let's go ahead and get to it. So real quick tip on this, when you're putting that pipe on the back here, where it's down in behind the intake manifold, so like right down in here where you have to come in from both sides, I highly recommend that you get a magnet tool like this and set up a M6x1 nut on it so that you can easily get your hand in position and get ready to receive this. Then you can just keep this magnet on the side as a guard, so that if the nut does drop out of your hand, it goes on the magnet and you don't lose the nut. I did end up losing one, but I have a whole bunch of these in the shop, so not a big deal. But for those who may not have any of these laying around, you're going to want to use a magnet, because you can't manipulate your hand and grab onto this nut very easily. And it's limited line of sight, so you're not going to be able to see in there very easily. So I think this is just a tool that will aid you in getting that pipe back on to the flange correctly, so you can then just get a couple turns on it so it's threaded. Once you get it threaded, you're home free, but getting it in position is a bit of a trick. So we're going to go ahead and put the EGR valve back on, torque everything down to spec. All right, so we've got everything buttoned back up, and it's just a few little loose ends to tidy this engine bay back up like it was before we started. So let's talk about the process, what it was like, the time it took to do this, and then you have a great idea about how long this maintenance item takes to do if you wanted to do it yourself or have a shop do it. So first timer, I would say it took me about 45 minutes to do this. And when I mean 45 minutes to do this, I mean 45 minutes to take everything apart, and it took about 50 minutes to put everything back together. The challenging part is that pipe on the back side, those M6x1 nuts, flange nuts that you have to use to attach the back pipe to the intake manifold. Those are particularly challenging. Please use my tip that I shared with you so that you have a little bit better idea of how to hold the nut while you are trying to put your hand into position and seal it back up. That is, if you can do that, that is the most challenging part of this job. Everything else is easy. Over here, all of this goes back together normally. It is a little difficult, I would say, to get some torque wrenches in there. Since torque wrenches aren't fine-toothed typically, it's a little bit hard to get your torque wrench to actually fit in there and then torque those nuts down, but you can do it. I know a lot of you might not use a torque wrench, so just use like a ratcheting wrench. That'll probably be your best option. It's slim, it's easy to get back in there. That's not very challenging at all. All in all, this routine maintenance should be done about every 60 to 80,000 miles. So it gives you an idea, if you're going to be dailying a Legend, how much effort it will take to clean that passage. But it went well. Can't say there was any real challenging parts rather than getting your hand physically back there. Once you clean everything out, you can put the gaskets back in, and in about 2 hours you can have it all buttoned back up. Now, depending on how much yours is caked up, it may take a little bit longer to clean it. I would say allot yourself about maybe 3.5 hours to do this job in total. If you are quite skilled at it, you could probably drive that down. So as you learn to do this, you probably get it down to about 3 hours with cleaning, maybe even less. But that's an idea about how long it takes to do this routine maintenance on the Acura Legend. So if you have a C32 like this right here, that's how you clean your EGR passages and your EGR valve. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.